On October 20th, 1977, a plane shattered in a Mississippi swamp. Ronnie Van Zant, the heart of Lynyrd Skynyrd, died quietly, his hand still clutching a skull-embroidered bandana. He had it all, Freebird echoing across America, blazing fame, and the love of millions of fans. But behind the stage, Ronnie hid a secret. He told his father, "I won't make it to 30. Those words haunted him like a curse under the stage lights. He was a Southern hero, barefoot and fearless. But in the shadows, he was just a lonely man, judged, crushed by the weight of fame. Why did a man with everything feel like he was falling? Was that crash just fate? Or did someone push him into the dark? Let's step into Ronnie's story, where the glow of stardom mixed with a pain no one saw. Are you ready to uncover the mystery behind the fall of Freebird? Chapter 1. A Tragedy. Born in Ronnie Van Zant's hopes. Some say Ronnie Van Zant once burned an old guitar in the darkness of an abandoned farm, the smoke rising like a whisper. He stood there, eyes blazing, and swore, "I'll burn before I fade." Was that vow just youthful passion or a sign of his fate? Picture a boy on the dusty streets of Jacksonville, Florida in 1948, clutching a skull-embroidered bandana, a gift from his mother. Marion, like a talisman. That was Ronnie, born to a working-class family where his father, Lacey Van Zant, had been a boxer before driving trucks. Lacey taught Ronnie to hit harder than he took, but tales of near-fatal fights planted a quiet fear in the boy. "Don't let anyone knock you down," Lacey said, his eyes sharp as a blade. But Ronnie, with a rebel's heart, dreamed of rising far beyond Jacksonville's hardscrabble roads. At 16, Ronnie formed a band called Us, declaring himself lead singer, his voice like a fire roaring through small-town homes. When Us fell apart, he didn't quit. He pulled together Bob Burns, Gary Rossington, Alan Collins, and Larry Junstrom, naming the band My Backyard, then Noble Five, and finally Lynyrd Skynyrd, a defiant nod to their strict teacher, Lynyrd Skynyrd. They rehearsed at Hell House, a rundown farm in the sticks, with no electricity, just darkness and wind whistling through wooden slats. Locals say one night, Ronnie sat alone at Hell House, his singing ringing out, but something or someone sang back, like a shadow in the dark. After that, Ronnie changed. His eyes grew sharper but heavier, as if he'd heard something no one else could grasp. His bond with his father was a tightrope stretched across his soul. Lacey, who'd stood under stage lights just once, watched Ronnie perform at 16. He said nothing, just walked away. After that night, Ronnie drank more, always clutching that skull bandana, as if seeking comfort. A chilling moment stands out one night in a small room. Ronnie stood before a mirror, testing an unfinished verse of Freebird. He stopped, stared at himself, eyes panicked, as if afraid his own voice might drag him into the dark. Neighbors judged him as a troubled kid when Hell House's music shook the block. That pain, being an outsider in his own hometown, carved itself into his heart. Lacey wanted Ronnie to take a steady job, but his rock dreams were too big. A rumor spread Lacey told friends Ronnie saw death as a child, as if his boxing stories had seeded an obsession with a short life. There he stood, a boy with a skull bandana and a burning dream. But why did his father's gaze make him drink more? Was Ronnie running from fate? Or had he already heard a call from Hell House? Chapter 2. The glory of fame and the real story. Freebird, the song that lifted every stage, made crowds roar, hearts pounding with each guitar note. But in Ronnie Van Zant's mind, it always ended with a fall no one saw. In 1973, the stage lights blazed as Lynyrd Skynyrd signed with MCA Records. Their debut album dropped, carrying Freebird, a song Ronnie wrote, its endless melody like his soul taking flight. It became a legend, blasting on radios, fans shouting "Play Freebird" at every show. Sweet Home Alabama in 1974 launched them higher, making Ronnie a Southern icon. He stood on stage, barefoot, that tattered skull bandana tucked in his pocket, worn and torn, but he never let it go, as if it were a fated charm. But that glory came at a steep price. Endless parties, whiskey flowing like rivers, drugs creeping into every night. In 1975, Ronnie threw a table out a hotel window, got handcuffed, but laughed loud, as if daring the world. In the dim glow of a dressing room, he stood before a mirror, muttering, "You're flying, but you'll fall, later." An assistant said Ronnie turned off all the lights, sat silent in the dark for nearly an hour. Knocks on the door went unanswered. Just silence. As if he were talking to a shadow in his mind. Fame's pressure weighed heavy. Managers pushed the band to tour nonstop, driving hundreds of miles for small gigs. Ronnie was trapped between the Southern hero image and his real self, a guy who just wanted to sing about simple things. A chilling rumor a week before a new tour. A crew member said Ronnie was called to a private meeting with label execs. After, he drank heavily, silent, eyes empty, hands gripping the skull bandana. Did the label force him into a dark deal? Ronnie was judged as reckless for rejecting lucrative contracts, isolating him in the industry. A 1976 Rolling Stone piece called him an uncontrollable star, but few saw his inner pain, the feeling of being used, forced to live faster, as if his time was running out. He drank more, lived more recklessly, as if he knew the spotlight would soon fade. Ronnie had it all: money, fame, fans' love, but why did he feel he was falling into darkness? He clung to that skull bandana, like he was holding on to something before it slipped away. Was Freebird truly a song of freedom, or a prophecy of Ronnie's doomed fall? Chapter 3. Cracks never told after the lights went down under the stage lights. Ronnie Van Zant was aflame, his voice tearing through the sky, electrifying crowds. But when the lights faded, he was a lonely figure, clutching his skull bandana, eyes heavy with sorrow, as if staring into an abyss behind his carefree front. Ronnie was drowning in shame. He married Nadine Inco in 1967 at 19, welcoming daughter Tammy, but by 1969, the marriage collapsed, leaving him with a sense of failure. He remarried Judy Seymour, had another child. But Judy told Rolling Stone in 1978, when Ronnie came home from tours, his eyes were empty, like the stage took his soul. He wanted to be a good father, but endless tours, nights of whiskey and drugs pulled him from his family. Ronnie's temper became legendary. Drummer Artemis Pyle, in The Scariest Frontman in Rock and Roll, said, "I saw Ronnie turn into a demon right before my eyes, punching a bandmate for drinking on stage. The media branded him violent, but few saw the pain inside, the sting of judgment from those he cared about." A shocking detail: one night in 1975, after an Atlanta show, a stagehand saw Ronnie alone backstage, gripping his skull bandana, staring into nothing and whispering, "Someone's watching me." Those words, like an echo from Hell House where he'd heard strange singing in the dark, sparked talk of a shadow trailing him. A fan rumor a month before a major 1976 tour. Ronnie got an anonymous letter warning him to stop crossing powerful people. He tore it up after reading, as a roadie later shared on X. Was it a threat from someone he'd defied? Like Mick Jagger at the Nebworth Festival, Ronnie was trapped in his Southern hero image. But Southern culture then saw weakness as shameful. When he tried cutting back on partying, industry friends mocked him, calling him a phony, that shame being judged. Isolated pushed him deeper into booze and drugs, as if to erase his loneliness. He held the skull bandana like a final charm, but his eyes grew heavier, as if he sensed a dark secret closing in. Ronnie stood between stage light and soul darkness, clutching his skull bandana. But could he escape himself? Was a shadow from Hell House calling his name, or was it just the fear in his heart? Chapter 4. Early Signs of Fate. A fan recalls Ronnie fell on stage, blood streaming from his nose, but he didn't stop. He gripped the mic with both hands, blood soaking his skull bandana, and sang as if defying death itself. The crowd roared, unaware they were watching a legend or a man breaking apart. In 1976, Lynyrd Skynyrd started to crack. Guitarist Alan Collins, drunk, crashed into another car, causing chaos. Gary Rossington, also wasted, slammed his car into a telephone pole, snapping an oak and racking up $7,000 in damage. Ronnie, Furious, fined each $5,000, his eyes cold as steel. But he too was sinking in whiskey and drugs, his body worn from sleepless nights. He'd been arrested over a dozen times for brawls, from trashing bars to fighting fans. The media called him out of control, but few saw his deep pain, the helplessness as the band he loved unraveled. A doctor once warned Ronnie his liver was failing. Ronnie just laughed. "I live fast, I'll go fast." Those words, cold as a night wind, echoed like a prophecy, a chilling detail a crew member said before each show. Ronnie would touch his skull bandana, eyes closed, like a prayer. But at the final Greenville show, he touched it, then let go, eyes empty, as if releasing something. Bandmates, who once called him leader, now whispered he was dragging them down, judging him. The pressure to stay the Southern hero crushed him. In a culture that shunned weakness, Ronnie wanted to save the band, be a rock for his family, but each fall, physical and emotional, pulled him closer to the edge. A spooky rumor, Artemis Pyle, in the terrifying last minutes of Lynyrd Skynyrd, said a week before the crash, on the tour bus. Ronnie stared out the window and said, "I see myself flying, but never landing. No one got it then, now it's clear." Those words, like echoes from Hell House's strange singing, fueled talk of a fated end. A 2020 X post hinted Ronnie was threatened by a secret enemy in the industry, tied to his defiance of Mick Jagger at the 1976 Nebworth Festival, where he led his band onto the Rolling Stones' tongue stage despite a ban. That rebellion made him a risk, but also a legend. Blood had spilled on stage, but Ronnie sang like he was immortal. Maybe he knew each wound, each fall was just a step to his final flight. Chapter 5. Fragile Happiness Before the Storm. On October 17th, 1977, the stage lights burned brighter than ever. Lynyrd Skynyrd released Street Survivors, their career's peak. Songs like That Smell and What's Your Name pulsed with life, like the final flare of Ronnie Van Zant and new guitarist Steve Gaines. Crowds went wild, chanting Ronnie's name, the barefoot Southern hero, hands gripping his skull bandana like a fated talisman. But in his heart, that happiness was fragile as mist before a storm. Ronnie told Judy, Artemis Pyle, his father, "I won't live to 30. He said it again and again, like a pact with death. Judy, his wife, told Rolling Stone in 1978, "I didn't cry when I heard the plane crashed. I knew, long before." She was the only one who believed Ronnie's prophecy, as if he'd seen Hell House's shadow closing in, a chilling detail before boarding the doomed flight. Ronnie stood silent by the rickety Convair 240. He stared at the wings so long a ground crew thought he was sick. Then he said, barely audible, "This thing's gonna kill us." He knew Aerosmith had rejected the plane for drunk pilots. But tour pressure loomed. Managers pushed him to go. Southern fans were waiting. Ronnie was judged reckless for not switching planes, but few saw his pain caught between fame and a deadly gut feeling. A rumor spread the Street Survivors cover, with the band in flames, was called a curse by some fans. Some said a disgruntled producer picked it as a dark warning. Ronnie was thrilled with the album's success, but his eyes stayed heavy, hands clutching the skull bandana like he was holding on to something before it was gone. The media mocked him for talking about death. Bandmates gave him doubtful looks. That shame being called crazy for speaking truth drove him to drink more, as if to drown the darkness trailing him from Hell House. Ronnie's happiness soared like Freebird. But why did it feel like it was slipping away? Was his prophecy the final sign of an unavoidable storm? Chapter 6. Despair in the Final Moments. Ronnie lay on the plane's floor, hugging an old pillow, eyes closed, hand gripping his skull bandana. No one knew it was his last time. On October 20th, 1977, after a blazing show in Greenville, South Carolina, Lynyrd Skynyrd boarded the creaky Convair 240, headed for Baton Rouge. Ronnie, drained from the previous night's party, slept deeply, unaware Hell House's darkness had caught up. Artemis Pyle's account says in the cockpit, pilot Walter McCreary frantically ordered him back to his seat. The plane was out of fuel, engines failing. Trees scraped the fuselage like 1,000 baseball bats, ripping the night sky. as the plane plunged. Ronnie didn't scream. They say he just opened his eyes, glancing one last time, then closed them, accepting fate. A haunting detail: rescuers found Ronnie's ring, engraved with Freebird, 10 meters from his body. Nearby, a charred scrap of paper, writing illegible, as if he'd tried to note something. Maybe he knew, maybe not. A 2020 X post suggested the plane was sabotaged, tied to Ronnie rejecting a big rival label deal, making him a threat in the industry. Managers, fans, and his own drive pressured him to tour, despite the unsafe plane. Ronnie was judged reckless, but few saw his despair, powerless to protect his band, family, or himself. He'd told Pyle, "I see myself flying but never landing." That dreamlike echo, now real, was his final flight. In those last moments, Ronnie didn't yell or blame. He just sat back, waiting for what he'd long expected. Conclusion: the legacy of a faded star. The October 20th, 1977 crash took Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Cassie Gaines, and 3 others. Lynyrd Skynyrd broke apart, leaving a void in Southern rock fans' hearts. 10 years later, Ronnie's brother Johnny led a reunion, but Ronnie's barefoot voice remains a silence. Freebird and Sweet Home Alabama still play on radios, in films, covered by Metallica, Kid Rock, Like a Fire That Never Dies. A monument in Gillsburg, Mississippi, where the plane fell, draws pilgrims. Fans leave guitars, letters, Confederate flags, tributes to a legend. The skull bandana, from Hell House to stage, sits in a small museum case. But the memory of Ronnie's eyes that night haunts those who saw them. Ronnie's story warns of fame's cost. The 1970s, with relentless tours and party culture, crushed many young stars. Ronnie was judged rebellious, called a drunk mess by media, doubted by bandmates when he spoke of death, but few saw his pain, the pressure to stay a Southern hero, the shame of missing family, the deathly premonition like a shadow from Hell House. A wild rumor in 2000, Ronnie's grave was disturbed, his body moved, fueling talk of a Lynyrd Skynyrd curse. Some fans believe managers knew the plane was unsafe but ignored it for profit. A mystery unsolved. A 2021 X post said a fan found a note near the Gillsburg monument, scrawled Ronnie, "Keep flying. No one knows who wrote it." Ronnie lived like Freebird, free, defiant, but his wings tore in the storm. The industry used him, society judged him, and he pushed himself to ruin. His lesson: fame can be a brilliant flame, but it can burn you down. Did Ronnie truly foresee his fate, or was he a victim of a cruel world? The Gillsburg monument stands in the swamp, where fans' letters read, "Ronnie, you're forever a free bird." He lived free, he died silent, but the mystery around him never quiets. What do you think of Ronnie's fate? Share in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more rock mysteries.